My daughter-in-law hired a caregiver for me after my hip surgery. She was attentive? Perfect. Until one day I saw a message sent to her. Phase 1, complete. She trusts me completely now. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again, and I panicked when I saw what Phase 2 involved. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. The morning light filtered through the lace curtains of my bedroom, casting delicate shadows across the mahogany dresser that had belonged to my mother. I'd been staring at those same patterns for 3 weeks now, ever since the hip replacement surgery that had transformed me from Georgia Holloway, successful jewelry designer and businesswoman, into a woman who needed help getting to the bathroom. I was 63 years old, and until that Tuesday in October when I'd slipped on the workshop stairs, I'd never asked anyone for help with anything. 40 years I'd spent building Holloway fine jewelry from a small repair shop into a business worth over $3 million. My pieces were sold in galleries from Boston to San Francisco. Celebrities wore my designs on red carpets. And now I couldn't even put on my own socks. "Good morning, Mrs. Holloway," came the soft, melodious voice from my doorway. "I've brought your breakfast and your medications." Rachel entered with the tray, her movements practiced and efficient. She was 32, with kind brown eyes and an easy smile that had won me over the moment my daughter-in-law Vanessa had introduced us 2 weeks ago. Rachel wore light blue scrubs and kept her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. Everything about her screamed competence and warmth. "You're too good to me," I said, struggling to sit up against the pillows. "Nonsense. That's what I'm here for." She set the tray across my lap with practiced ease, adjusting the angle so I could reach everything comfortably. Scrambled eggs, whole wheat toast, fresh fruit, and my pill organizer arranged by time of day. "How's the pain this morning?" "Better?" I lied. The truth was, the pain had been getting worse, but I didn't want to seem weak. I'd spent my entire life projecting strength. Old habits died hard. Rachel's brow furrowed with concern. "Mrs. Holloway, if you're hurting, we need to call Dr. Pierce. There's no prize for suffering in silence." I found myself smiling despite the discomfort. "You remind me of my mother. She never let me get away with anything either." "I'll take that as a compliment." Rachel checked her watch. "I need to help you with your exercises after breakfast, and then you have a phone call scheduled with your son at 10. Vanessa wanted to make sure you two stayed connected while she handles the business meetings this week." The mention of Vanessa made something tighten in my chest, though I couldn't have explained why. My daughter-in-law had been nothing but helpful since the accident. She'd found Rachel, arranged for my care, and stepped in to handle the day-to-day operations of Holloway fine jewelry while I recovered. My son Daniel worked in finance in the city and couldn't take time off, so Vanessa had volunteered immediately. "That's very thoughtful of her," I said, picking at the eggs. Rachel moved to open the curtains wider, and I noticed her phone was sticking out of her scrub pocket. It buzzed, and she glanced at it quickly before tucking it away more securely. Something flickered across her face, too fast for me to read. "Everything all right?" I asked. "Oh, yes. Just my sister. She always texts at the worst times." Rachel's smile returned, bright and reassuring. "Now, let's get some food in you before those pills, or you'll feel queasy." The morning routine continued as it had for the past 2 weeks. Rachel was patient, thorough, and never made me feel like a burden. She helped me bathe, dressed me in comfortable clothes, and guided me through the physical therapy exercises the hospital had prescribed. By the time Daniel's call came through at 10, I was exhausted but grateful. "Mom, you sound tired," Daniel said, his voice crackling slightly through the phone connection. "Is Rachel taking good care of you?" "She's wonderful," I assured him. "How are things at work?" "Busy. Always busy." He paused. "Vanessa says the business is running smoothly. She's been meeting with the suppliers and reviewing the inventory. She thinks there might be some opportunities to expand the online presence." Something cold settled in my stomach. Expand? We discussed waiting until I was back on my feet to make any major decisions. "It's nothing major, Mom. Just some preliminary research. You know Vanessa, she's always thinking ahead." Daniel's tone was soothing, almost patronizing. "The important thing is that you focus on getting better. Let us handle the business stuff for now." After we hung up, I sat in the armchair by the window, staring out at the October colors painting the trees in my backyard. The property had been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather had built the main house in 1923, and I'd converted the old carriage house into my jewelry workshop 30 years ago. Everything I'd built was rooted in this place. Rachel appeared with lunch, and the afternoon passed in a comfortable routine. She read to me from a mystery novel, helped me walk circuits around the first floor using my walker, and prepared a dinner that would have made a chef proud. By 8 o'clock, I was back in bed, my hip aching despite the medication. "I'm going to step out and call my sister back," Rachel said, gathering the dinner dishes. "I'll be right downstairs if you need anything. Just use the bell." She'd given me a small silver bell to ring if I needed help during the night. I hadn't used it yet. Pride, I supposed, or maybe stubbornness. Either way, I nodded and watched her leave, pulling the door almost closed behind her. I must have dozed off because when I opened my eyes, the room was darker, the bedside lamp casting a small pool of warm light. I could hear Rachel's voice drifting up from downstairs, muffled but animated. She must have been on her phone call. I needed to use the bathroom. I hated the thought of ringing the bell, of interrupting her personal time. Carefully, I swung my legs over the side of the bed and reached for the walker. The bathroom was only 10 feet away. I could manage. The walker's wheels squeaked softly on the hardwood floor. Each step sent a spike of discomfort through my hip, but I gritted my teeth and kept moving. I was almost to the bathroom door when I saw it. Rachel's phone, sitting on the dresser where she must have set it down when she was helping me into bed. The screen was lit up with a new message notification. I shouldn't have looked. I knew that. But something made me pause, made me lean closer to read the preview text displayed on the lock screen. The message was from a contact labeled only with a letter. V. Phase 1 complete. She trusts me completely now. My heart began to pound. Phase 1? What did that mean? My hands trembled as I gripped the walker, staring at those words. Before I could process what I was reading, the phone buzzed again. Another message from V. Perfect. Proceed to Phase 2. Start documenting her confusion. Small mistakes, forgotten conversations. We need the medical team to believe the cognitive decline is real. The guardianship hearing is in 6 weeks. Once we have legal control, Daniel will sign the business over. After that, we handle him. The room seemed to tilt. I grabbed the dresser to steady myself, my hips screaming in protest. We handle him. Daniel. My son. The phone buzzed a third time. Remember, no actual medication changes yet, just documentation. I'm meeting with the lawyer tomorrow to finalize the power of attorney paperwork. She has no idea we've been copying her signature from the business documents. By Christmas, Holloway Fine Jewelry will be mine, and Daniel will be out of the picture. His insurance policy is substantial. Make sure she witnesses his accident when the time comes. Elderly people die of shock all the time. My vision blurred. I couldn't breathe. Vanessa. V for Vanessa. My daughter-in-law. And Rachel, this woman I'd welcomed into my home, into my most vulnerable moments, was working with her. They planned to steal my business. They planned to have me declared incompetent. And they planned to kill my son. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Rachel was coming back. With shaking hands, I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and quickly snapped photos of the messages on Rachel's screen. The flash seemed blindingly bright in the dim room. I'd just managed to shove my phone under my pillow when the bedroom door opened wider. "Mrs. Holloway, what are you doing out of bed?" Rachel's voice was filled with concern, but now I could hear something else underneath it. Something calculated. "You should have rung the bell. You could have fallen." "I just needed the bathroom," I managed, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. Rachel's eyes flicked to the dresser, to where her phone sat. Had she noticed it had been moved? I couldn't tell. She smiled that warm, practiced smile and came to help me. "Let me assist you. We can't have you taking risks." As her hands gripped my arms, all I could think about was the message. We handle him. Make sure she witnesses his accident. I was being cared for by someone who planned to help murder my son, and I had 6 weeks to stop them. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those messages. We handle him. His insurance policy is substantial. Make sure she witnesses his accident. My son, my only child, the baby I'd rocked to sleep, the boy I'd taught to ride a bicycle, the man who'd stood beside me at his father's funeral 10 years ago. Vanessa wanted him dead for insurance money and a clear path to my business. And I was supposed to lie here, helpless, while they executed their plan. By dawn, I'd made several decisions. First, I couldn't let them know I was aware of anything. The moment Rachel or Vanessa suspected I'd discovered their scheme, they might accelerate their timeline or simply make me disappear. An elderly woman with recent surgery, dependent on pain medications, it would be easy to arrange an overdose and call it accidental. Second, I needed to warn Daniel, but I had to be careful. If I called him directly, Vanessa might overhear. She worked from home most days now, supposedly to be available if Daniel needed anything. More likely, she was monitoring his communications. Third, I needed evidence. Photos of text messages on someone else's phone wouldn't hold up in court, not without the actual device. I needed more, and I needed it documented in ways that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. When Rachel came in with my breakfast at 7:30, I was ready. I'd practiced my expression in the mirror during one of my painful trips to the bathroom, schooling my features into the same grateful, dependent look I'd worn for the past 2 weeks. "Good morning, Mrs. Holloway. You're looking bright-eyed this morning," Rachel said, setting down the tray with her usual efficiency. "I slept wonderfully," I lied, accepting the pills she handed me. I palmed 2 of them while pretending to swallow, tucking them into the pocket of my robe. I needed my mind sharp, not dulled by painkillers. "Rachel, I was thinking, I'd love to see some of my jewelry designs. Do you think you could bring up the portfolio from my workshop? The leather binder on the main workbench?" Something flickered in Rachel's eyes. Calculation. Of course. But maybe we should check with Vanessa first. She mentioned wanting to organize your work files while you're recovering. "It's just a portfolio of sketches," I said, keeping my voice light. "Nothing official. I'd just like something to occupy my mind. Let me give her a quick call." Rachel pulled out her phone, and I watched carefully as she unlocked it. 4-digit PIN, 1827. She turned away slightly as she dialed, but I caught the movement of her fingers. "Hi, Vanessa. Yes, she's fine. Listen, Mrs. Holloway wants her design portfolio from the workshop. Should I?" She paused, listening. "Oh, I see. Yes, that makes sense. I'll let her know." Rachel turned back to me with an apologetic smile. "Vanessa says the workshop is being reorganized right now. She's having an appraiser come in to catalog everything for insurance purposes. She'll bring you some designs herself when she visits this afternoon." My stomach clenched. An appraiser? For insurance purposes? Or was Vanessa already cataloging my life's work for sale? How thoughtful of her, I managed. The morning dragged on. Rachel was attentive as always, helping me with exercises, preparing lunch, keeping up a steady stream of pleasant conversation. But now I noticed things I'd missed before. The way she steered me away from certain topics. The way she made notes on her phone after I spoke, documenting everything I said. Building her case for my supposed cognitive decline. At 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I heard Rachel answer it. Heard Vanessa's voice drifting up the stairs, bright and false. "Georgia, how are you feeling today?" Vanessa swept into my room like she owned it, which I suppose she believed she soon would. She was 35, blonde, beautiful in that calculated way that came from expensive salons and personal trainers. She'd been perfect when Daniel first brought her home 5 years ago. Charming, interested in the family business, eager to learn about jewelry design. I'd been so proud when Daniel married her. So relieved he'd found someone who seemed to love what we'd built. What a fool I'd been. "I'm improving every day," I said, watching her carefully. "Rachel takes excellent care of me." "She's the best," Vanessa agreed, settling into the chair beside my bed. "I wanted to talk to you about a few business matters. Nothing urgent, just some decisions that need to be made." "Of course." She pulled out a tablet, swiping through screens. "The Berkshire Gallery wants to do a retrospective of your work next spring. They're asking for 40 pieces, including some of the early designs. I think it's a wonderful opportunity. It is, I agreed carefully. The thing is, they need a commitment soon, and they want to purchase several pieces outright for their permanent collection. Vanessa's voice was casual, but her eyes were sharp. I've been going through the inventory, and I think we should let them have the Moonstone series. You designed those in the 80s, and honestly, the style is a bit dated for current retail. The Moonstone series, my breakthrough work, the designs that had caught the attention of major galleries and launched my career. Each piece was worth at least $50,000, and there were 12 of them. Those pieces aren't for sale, I said flatly. Vanessa's smile tightened. Georgia, I understand they're sentimental, but we need to think about the business. This is a prestigious gallery. The exposure could… No. The word hung in the air. Rachel shifted uncomfortably by the door. Vanessa's expression went very still. We can discuss it later, Vanessa said finally, when you're feeling better. Speaking of which, Rachel's been telling me you've seemed a bit confused lately, forgetting conversations, getting disoriented. My blood ran cold. It was starting. The documentation, the false narrative of decline. I haven't been confused, I said carefully. You asked me to bring your portfolio this morning, Rachel said softly. But we talked about that yesterday, and you said you'd rather wait until you could go to the workshop yourself. I hadn't said anything of the sort. She was lying, and doing it with such conviction that I almost doubted my own memory. I don't remember that conversation, I said. Rachel and Vanessa exchanged a look. Concerned. Knowing. It's probably the pain medication, Vanessa said smoothly. Dr. Pierce warned us about possible cognitive side effects in patients your age. Maybe we should have him come by for an evaluation, just to be safe. I'm fine, I insisted, hearing the edge in my own voice. I don't need an evaluation. We just want what's best for you, Vanessa said, reaching out to pat my hand. Her touch made my skin crawl. You've worked so hard your whole life. You deserve to rest, to let others handle the burdens. Daniel and I can take care of the business. You don't need to worry about anything. After they left, I sat in trembling silence. They were moving faster than I'd expected. The false documentation, the talk of evaluations, the casual mention of selling my most valuable pieces. How long before they convinced some doctor I wasn't competent? How long before they produced power of attorney documents with my forged signature? I needed help, but I couldn't trust anyone in my immediate circle. Vanessa had been cultivating relationships with my business associates for months. Who knew how many of them she'd already turned? Then I remembered Charlotte Dean. Charlotte had been my father's attorney, then mine, for 35 years. She'd handled the business incorporation, my divorce, my father's estate. She was 72 now, supposedly retired, but I knew she still maintained a small practice for select clients. More importantly, Charlotte was shrewd, skeptical, and utterly incorruptible. But how could I contact her without Rachel monitoring my every move? That night, after Rachel had helped me into bed and gone downstairs, I retrieved my phone from under my pillow where I'd hidden it. My hands shook as I opened my email and began typing. Charlotte, I need your help urgently. Cannot explain in detail now, but I believe someone is trying to have me declared incompetent and steal my business. They may be planning worse. Please call me tomorrow at exactly 11 a.m. Tell Rachel, my caregiver, that you need to discuss estate planning. She monitors everything. Trust no one else. MH. I hit send and deleted the email from my sent folder, then cleared my browser history. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The next morning crawled by. Rachel was cheerful as always, but I noticed her watching me more carefully. Had Vanessa told her to increase surveillance? At 10:55, my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Would Charlotte get the message? Would she understand the urgency? At exactly 11 o'clock, my phone rang. Rachel, who'd been folding laundry in the corner of my room, looked up. It's Charlotte Dean, I said, reading the caller ID with relief I had to work hard to hide. My attorney. Rachel's expression shifted, just for a moment. Concern? Fear? Then the pleasant mask was back. I'll give you privacy. No need, I said quickly. It's just estate planning. Boring legal matters. Rachel hesitated, then nodded and stayed, pretending to focus on the laundry while clearly listening to every word. "Charlotte, how good to hear from you," I said, putting the phone on speaker. "Georgia." Charlotte's voice was crisp, professional, giving nothing away. "I received your message about updating your estate documents. Given your recent surgery, I think it's wise to review everything. I'd like to come by tomorrow at 2 o'clock if that works for you." "That would be perfect." "And Georgia?" Charlotte's tone shifted, became almost casual. "I'll need to see all your current documentation, power of attorney forms, business papers, everything. Better to have it organized before I arrive." "Of course." After we hung up, Rachel was still folding the same towel. "Is everything all right, Mrs. Holloway?" "Just routine legal matters," I said. "Getting old requires so much paperwork." That afternoon, while Rachel was downstairs preparing dinner, I heard the front door open. Voices in the foyer. Vanessa's voice, sharp and angry, though I couldn't make out the words. Then Rachel's, placating. I moved as quietly as I could to the bedroom door, pulling it open just a crack. "Calling her lawyer? Why didn't you stop it?" Vanessa was saying. "I was right there. It's just estate planning. If I'd objected, it would have seemed suspicious." "Everything is suspicious now. We're supposed to have her isolated, dependent, not bringing in attorneys. What was I supposed to do? Rip the phone out of her hands?" There was a long pause. Then Vanessa spoke again, her voice colder. "We move up the timeline. I'll have the guardianship papers ready by next week. And we deal with Daniel this weekend. The hunting trip. Make it look like an accident." My heart stopped. "That's too soon," Rachel protested. "We need more documentation. We do it this weekend or we risk losing everything. Georgia's more alert than you've been reporting. She's suspicious. I can see it." Vanessa's heels clicked across the hardwood floor. "Make sure she takes the full dose of medications tonight. I want her foggy tomorrow when the appraiser comes. And Rachel, don't fail me again." The front door slammed. I stumbled back to the bed, my hips screaming, my hands shaking. This weekend. They were going to kill Daniel this weekend. And tomorrow, Vanessa was bringing an appraiser to catalog everything I'd built so she could sell it off piece by piece. I had less than 24 hours to stop them. That night, I pretended to swallow the pills Rachel brought me. All of them. I tucked them under my tongue, waited until she left the room, then spit them into a tissue and hid them in the drawer of my nightstand alongside the others I'd been collecting. My hip throbbed with a pain that made me want to weep, but I needed clarity more than I needed relief. Once Rachel had gone to her room in the converted attic space, I waited another hour, listening to the house settle into silence. Then I reached for my phone and did something I hadn't done in years. I called my ex-husband's brother. Thomas Holloway had been a private investigator before he retired to Florida. We'd never been close, but he was family, and more importantly, he owed me. I'd lent him $50,000 to start his business 30 years ago and never asked for repayment when his first marriage fell apart. "Georgia? It's 1 a.m, Thomas answered, his voice thick with sleep. "I need your help, please. It's about Daniel." That got his attention. I heard rustling, then his voice came back clearer. "What's wrong?" I told him everything, keeping my voice to a whisper. The messages, the plan to kill Daniel, the guardianship scheme, Vanessa's plot to steal my business. When I finished, there was a long silence. "Do you have proof?" Thomas asked finally. "Photos of the messages on Rachel's phone. I emailed them to myself, but I'm afraid to access them from here. They might be monitoring my accounts." "They probably are. Georgia, this is serious. If what you're saying is true, it's true, then you're in immediate danger. So is Daniel. I can be there by tomorrow night, but that might not be fast enough if they're planning something this weekend. Charlotte Dean is coming tomorrow at 2. She's my attorney." "Good. That's good. But listen carefully. You need to act confused tomorrow. Give them what they expect to see. If Vanessa thinks you're onto them, she'll move even faster. Can you do that? Could I? Could I pretend to be a doddering old woman while my son's life hung in the balance?" "Yes," I said. "I'll make some calls tonight. I still have contacts in law enforcement up there. But Georgia, we need more than photos of text messages. We need something concrete. Documents, recordings, something that proves intent. After we hung up, I lay in the darkness, my mind racing. Something concrete. What did I have access to? Rachel's phone required a PIN I'd memorized but couldn't access without her noticing. My own computer was in the workshop, which Vanessa now controlled. My business files the same. Then I remembered the safe in my closet. My father had installed it decades ago, and only I knew the combination. Inside were the original business incorporation papers, my will, some family jewelry, and most importantly, a backup drive containing scans of every business document and contract from the past 15 years. I'd been meticulous about record keeping, a habit learned from my mother. But could I access the safe without Rachel hearing? I had to try. Moving with the walker was out of the question. Too noisy. Instead, I rolled out of bed and crawled, biting back cries of pain as my hip protested every movement. The closet was only 15 feet away, but it felt like miles. Sweat poured down my face by the time I reached it. The safe was behind a row of shoeboxes on the floor. I pulled them aside as quietly as possible and spun the dial with shaking fingers. Right 23, left 41, right 17. The lock clicked softly and the door swung open. The backup drive was in a small velvet bag. I grabbed it along with a few other items. My grandmother's diamond brooch, some cash, and a sealed envelope I'd placed there years ago. Inside that envelope was something I'd hoped never to use. Documentation of Vanessa's past. Before Daniel had married her, I'd felt uneasy. Something about Vanessa's story didn't add up. She claimed to be from old money, educated at prestigious schools, but there were gaps in her history she glossed over. So I'd hired an investigator. What he'd found had troubled me, but not enough to justify destroying Daniel's happiness. Vanessa had lied about her background. Her real name was Vanessa Marie Stokes, not Vanessa Hartford as she claimed. She'd grown up in poverty in Nevada, had a juvenile record that was sealed, and had been married before, to a man who'd died in a convenient accident that left her with a substantial insurance payout. I'd never told Daniel. I'd convinced myself everyone deserved a second chance, that people could change. The investigator's report had stayed sealed in my safe, a secret I'd buried out of love for my son. What a mistake that had been. I was halfway back to the bed when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Rachel's footsteps. My heart hammered as I frantically crawled the last few feet and hauled myself onto the mattress. I'd just managed to shove the items under my pillow when my bedroom door opened. Mrs. Holloway? Rachel stood silhouetted in the doorway, backlit by the hall light. I thought I heard something. Just getting water, I managed, gesturing weakly to the glass on my nightstand. I didn't want to bother you. She moved closer, her eyes scanning the room. Did she notice the closet door was slightly ajar? The disturbed shoeboxes? You should have rung the bell, Rachel said, her voice soft but with an edge I hadn't heard before. You could have fallen, injured yourself worse. At your age, another fall could be... She let the sentence hang, and the implied threat was unmistakable. I'll remember that, I said. Rachel lingered for another moment, then nodded. Try to sleep. Tomorrow's a big day with the appraiser coming and your lawyer. You'll need your rest. After she left, I waited a full 30 minutes before retrieving the items from under my pillow. I slipped the backup drive and the investigator's report inside my pillowcase, then hid the brooch and cash in the pocket of a robe hanging in the bathroom. The next morning arrived too quickly. Rachel brought breakfast, all false cheerfulness, and the full dose of medications. I took them with apparent obedience, then vomited them up in the bathroom when she left the room to answer a phone call. My hip was a symphony of agony, but I couldn't afford to be dulled. At 9:30, Vanessa arrived with a thin man in an expensive suit carrying an electronic tablet. He introduced himself as Don Fowler, a certified appraiser from Portland. Georgia, Mr. Fowler is going to catalog your collection, Vanessa said, her voice bright. For insurance purposes, as I mentioned. I'll take him to the workshop while Rachel gets you ready for your lawyer's visit. My keys, I said vaguely, playing the role Thomas had advised. Where did I put my keys? I have a set, remember? Vanessa held up a key ring, and I recognized it as the spare I'd given Daniel years ago. Don't worry about a thing. As Vanessa and the appraiser headed to the workshop, Rachel helped me dress. She chose my clothes carefully. A somewhat dowdy cardigan, comfortable but aging pants, slippers instead of shoes. She was styling me to look diminished, I realized. Feeble. "Let's do your hair," Rachel said, pulling it back into a style that added years to my appearance. Through the window, I could see Vanessa and Mr. Fowler entering my workshop. My life's work, being cataloged for theft. I had to grip the armchair to keep from screaming. At 1:45, Charlotte Dean arrived. I heard her voice in the foyer, crisp and no nonsense, and felt a surge of hope so powerful it nearly undid my careful composure. "Georgia," Charlotte said, entering my bedroom with her worn leather briefcase. She was exactly as I remembered. Sharp gray eyes, steel gray hair in a neat bun, a suit that had been fashionable in 1985 and hadn't changed since. "You're looking well." Rachel hovered by the door. "I'll just be downstairs if you need anything." "Actually," Charlotte said, not looking at her, "attorney-client privilege requires privacy. Close the door on your way out." Rachel's jaw tightened, but she had no choice. The door clicked shut. Charlotte waited a beat, then moved to the window and looked out at the workshop. "That woman with the appraiser. Your daughter-in-law?" "Yes." "She's trouble, Georgia. I can see it from here." Charlotte turned back to me, and her expression was fierce. "Now, tell me everything, and don't leave out a single detail." I told her. Everything. When I reached the part about the plan to kill Daniel, Charlotte's face went pale. "That hunting trip," I said. "It's this weekend." "Saturday morning. Daniel mentioned it last week. Vanessa encouraged him to go, said he needed a break from work stress. I didn't think anything of it then." Charlotte pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the police." "No." I grabbed her arm. "Thomas Holloway is already working on that. He has contacts who will take this seriously. But if we call the local police now, Vanessa has connections. She's been cultivating the sheriff, bringing him coffee, being helpful. He might warn her." Charlotte's expression said she didn't like it, but she understood. "What do you need from me?" "I need documents notarized. New power of attorney forms, explicitly revoking any previous versions. A new will. Everything dated and witnessed today, making it impossible for them to claim I'm incompetent. Consider it done. What else?" I pulled out the backup drive and the investigator's report from my pillowcase. "These need to be somewhere safe. Copies made. If something happens to me—" "Nothing is going to happen to you," Charlotte said firmly. She took the items and placed them in her briefcase. "I'll have everything documented, copied, and filed with 3 different attorneys by tonight. But Georgia, we're running out of time. If they're planning something for Saturday—" "I know. There's something else you should know," Charlotte said quietly. "I did some digging after your email last night. Your business accounts have been accessed multiple times in the past month. Small transfers, nothing large enough to trigger automatic alerts. But altogether about $200,000 has been moved into offshore accounts. The signatures on the transfer authorizations have your name, but I'd bet my license they're forgeries. $200,000. Already stolen, and that was just the beginning. Can we stop them?" I asked. "We can try. I'm filing emergency injunctions this afternoon. But Georgia, the guardianship hearing is scheduled for next Friday. I checked the court records. The paperwork was filed 3 weeks ago." 3 weeks? They'd been planning this since before my surgery. Maybe the surgery itself had been part of the plan. Had someone made sure I would fall on those workshop stairs? The bedroom door opened without warning. Rachel stood there, her pleasant expression strained. "Mrs. Holloway, you have a visitor. Your daughter-in-law and Mr. Fowler have finished the inventory and would like to go over some items with you." Behind her, I could see Vanessa in the hallway, her eyes cold and calculating. "Georgia's in the middle of a legal consultation," Charlotte said icily. "This will only take a moment," Vanessa said, pushing past Rachel into the room. Mr. Fowler followed, his tablet clutched to his chest. "Mother Georgia, there's been a problem with the inventory. It seems several pieces are missing. Very valuable pieces, the sapphire parure, for instance, and the moonstone series appears to be incomplete." My blood ran cold. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything," Vanessa said, her voice sweet as poison. I'm simply noting discrepancies. Rachel, you've been here with Mrs. Holloway constantly. Have you noticed her being confused about her jewelry? Perhaps moving pieces and forgetting where she put them? Rachel's eyes met mine, and in them I saw the trap closing. Well, there have been a few instances. She's asked for items and then insisted she never asked. And yesterday, she couldn't remember where she'd put her keys. I have my keys right here, I said. But even as I said it, I realized I didn't. I hadn't seen them since the surgery. You see? Vanessa turned to Charlotte, her expression sorrowful. This is exactly what we've been worried about. Memory issues, confusion, now valuable pieces missing. We obviously need to take steps to protect Georgia from herself before something worse happens. Charlotte stood. This meeting is over. I need to speak with the sheriff about these allegations. Oh, I already called him, Vanessa said, smiling. He's on his way. Poor Georgia. Losing track of millions of dollars in jewelry. At her age, with her confusion, clearly she needs proper supervision. Through the window, I saw a police car pulling into the driveway. And I realized with horrifying clarity, Vanessa hadn't just been planning to steal my business and kill my son. She'd been building an airtight case to have me committed. Sheriff Tom Bradley was a man I'd known for 15 years. He'd been a customer at my jewelry store, buying anniversary gifts for his wife. I'd donated to his re-election campaigns. When he walked into my bedroom with his deputy, I saw something in his face that made my stomach drop. Pity. He saw me as a victim, an elderly woman losing her grip on reality. Mrs. Holloway, he said gently, removing his hat. I understand there's been some concern about missing property. There's no missing property, I said firmly, but I heard how my voice trembled with pain and exhaustion. I sounded exactly like what Vanessa wanted them to see. Confused, fragile, unreliable. Georgia has been under significant stress, Vanessa said, her hand on the sheriff's arm in a gesture that was almost proprietary. The surgery, the medications. Rachel has been wonderful, but there's only so much a caregiver can do when someone is experiencing cognitive decline. I am not experiencing cognitive decline, I snapped. Charlotte stepped forward. Sheriff Bradley, I'm Charlotte Dean, Mrs. Holloway's attorney. These allegations are completely unfounded. This is a transparent attempt to— Ms. Dean, the sheriff interrupted, his voice still gentle but firm. With all due respect, we have documentation here from a certified appraiser that Mrs. Holloway's own inventory records show pieces that cannot be located. We're talking about items worth potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. Mr. Fowler held up his tablet. The sapphire parure alone is valued at $350,000. According to Mrs. Holloway's insurance records, it should be in the workshop safe. It's not there. Because I'd moved it to my bedroom safe 6 months ago after installing a new alarm system in the workshop. I'd documented the transfer in my personal files, but those files were on my computer in the workshop, which Vanessa now controlled. I moved those pieces, I said. They're in my bedroom safe. Vanessa's eyes gleamed. Mother Georgia, we checked your bedroom safe this morning, while you were sleeping. We were concerned about security. The safe was empty except for some old documents and cash. No, that was impossible. I'd opened that safe last night. The jewelry had been— And then I understood. Rachel. She must have heard me after all. Must have waited until I fell asleep and opened the safe herself. But how had she known the combination? The answer hit me like a physical blow. The medications. They hadn't just been trying to make me foggy. Some combination had been making me drowsy, susceptible. Had I said the combination out loud in a medication-induced haze? Or had Rachel simply watched me through the crack in the door last night? Sheriff, I moved valuable jewelry from that safe just last night, Charlotte said. I witnessed Mrs. Holloway access it. The pieces were there. Can you identify what pieces? The sheriff asked. Charlotte hesitated. She hadn't actually seen inside the safe. I'd retrieved the items while her back was turned. I want to see the safe, I said. Take me to my closet, I'll show you. The sheriff nodded, and Rachel moved to help me, but Charlotte blocked her way. I'll assist Mrs. Holloway. With Charlotte's help, I made the agonizing journey to the closet. The safe door stood open, and inside was exactly what Vanessa had described. Documents, cash, the backup drive and investigator's report I'd removed. But the velvet bags that should have held my grandmother's jewelry, the sapphire parure, and 3 other valuable pieces were gone. Someone took them, I said. Last night or this morning. Mrs. Holloway, the sheriff said, his voice heavy with that terrible pity. Is it possible you moved them somewhere else and don't remember? No. The medication she's on can cause memory issues, Rachel said quietly. Dr. Pierce warned us about that. Call Dr. Pierce, I demanded. Ask him. We did, Vanessa said, pulling out her phone. He's very concerned. In fact, he's agreed to come by this afternoon for an evaluation. He thinks, given everything that's happening, it might be best if you had round-the-clock professional care. Perhaps at a facility where they can monitor your medication more carefully. A facility. They were going to have me committed. Today. Absolutely not, Charlotte said. Georgia is of sound mind and, is she? Vanessa turned to the sheriff. Tom, you've known my mother-in-law for years. Doesn't this seem like someone who needs help? First she can't find her keys, then she forgets conversations. Now valuable jewelry is missing and she has no idea where it is. What if she gave it to someone and doesn't remember? What if it was stolen and she didn't notice? The sheriff shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Holloway, maybe having a doctor evaluate you isn't such a bad idea, just to be safe. I'm being framed, I said, and heard how desperate, how paranoid the words sounded. Vanessa is trying to steal my business. She's planning to kill my son. She and Rachel have been documenting false evidence of confusion so they can have me declared incompetent. The silence that followed was deafening. Georgia, Vanessa said softly, tears actually welling in her eyes. I know you're scared and confused, but these accusations. Daniel and I love you. We're trying to help you. Show them your phone, I said to Rachel. Show them the messages from Vanessa. The ones about phases and guardianship and handling Daniel. Rachel's face was a mask of concern. Mrs. Holloway, I don't have any messages like that. I think the stress and medications are making you imagine things that aren't there. I have photos, I said. On my phone. I took pictures of the messages. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, my hands shaking as I opened the photo app. The photos I'd taken 2 nights ago should have been right there, time-stamped and clear. They were gone. Let me see, Charlotte said, taking the phone. She checked the recently deleted folder, the cloud backup, everything. Georgia, there's nothing here. She deleted them, I said. Rachel must have deleted them when I was asleep. Mrs. Holloway, I would never go through your personal phone, Rachel said, and she sounded so sincere, so hurt by the accusation. Sheriff, this is exactly what we've been worried about. These paranoid delusions, the accusations against family members who are trying to help. The deputy was taking notes. The sheriff looked at me with growing concern, and Vanessa stood there with tears on her perfectly made-up face. The picture of a devoted daughter-in-law dealing with a deteriorating elderly relative. I was losing. Despite knowing the truth, despite having Charlotte as a witness, I was losing. Sheriff Bradley, Charlotte said, her voice sharp. I'd like you to know that I've filed emergency injunctions this afternoon to freeze all of Mrs. Holloway's business accounts. I've also documented transfers of over $200,000 made without her knowledge or consent. If you're looking for theft, I suggest you start there. The sheriff's expression shifted. What transfers? Forgeries, Charlotte said. I have documentation that Mrs. Holloway's signature was used without authorization to move funds into offshore accounts. I'll be filing criminal complaints by end of business today. Vanessa's mask slipped, just for a second. Those transfers were authorized. Georgia signed the papers herself. She's done it before, moving money around for tax purposes. Then you'll have no problem providing the original documents for forensic analysis, Charlotte said. I'm sure a handwriting expert will be very interested in examining them. This is ridiculous, Vanessa said, her voice hardening. Tom, are you going to let her derail this conversation? We're talking about Georgia's safety, not spurious accusations about accounting procedures. The sheriff looked between us, clearly out of his depth. Ladies, I think we all need to calm down. Mrs. Holloway, Would you consent to having Dr. Pierce examine you? Just to rule out any medical causes for the confusion? If he examines me, he'll declare me incompetent based on false information Vanessa and Rachel have been feeding him, I said. That's the whole plan. Georgia, please, the sheriff said. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be. I saw it then, in his eyes. He'd already decided. Vanessa had gotten to him first, spent weeks or months building rapport, establishing credibility, and I was just an elderly woman making wild accusations about conspiracy and murder. I want everyone out of my house, I said. Except Charlotte. Right now. Mrs. Holloway, I don't think that's wise, Rachel said. You need someone to help with your medications, your physical therapy. Get out! The words came out as a shout, raw with fury and fear. Get out of my house! Georgia, you're not well, Vanessa said. We can't leave you alone when you're like this. What if you fall? What if you hurt yourself? I'll stay with her, Charlotte said firmly. I'll remain here as both her attorney and as a companion until this matter is resolved. The sheriff nodded slowly. That seems like a reasonable compromise. Mrs. Holloway, I'll expect you to consent to a medical evaluation within the next 24 hours. If you refuse, I'll have no choice but to petition for an emergency psychiatric hold. After they left, Vanessa with a final look of triumph, Rachel with false concern, the sheriff with his damnable pity, Charlotte locked the front door and turned to me. Tell me you have a backup plan, she said. Thomas is coming tonight. He's bringing someone from the state police. That might not be enough. Georgia, they've built a very convincing case. The missing jewelry, the memory issues, now this outburst. A judge could order an evaluation based on what happened here today. I know. I sank into the armchair, my hips screaming. Charlotte, I need to get those jewelry pieces back. They're somewhere in this house. Vanessa wouldn't risk moving them off property yet. Not with you filing injunctions. Charlotte's eyes narrowed. You think she hid them here? Why? Because if they turn up after I'm committed, it will prove I was confused, that I hid them myself and forgot. It completes the narrative. I looked at my longtime friend and attorney. We need to search this house. Every room, every hiding place, before Dr. Pierce arrives tomorrow. Georgia, you can barely walk. Then you'll have to search while I direct you. Charlotte pulled out her phone. I'm calling my assistant. And my nephew. We'll need help. While she made calls, I sat in the gathering darkness and thought about all the ways this could still go wrong. Daniel was still in danger. The hunting trip was in 2 days. Vanessa could accelerate her plans at any moment. And I was trapped in this house, in this failing body, racing against a clock I couldn't see. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop fighting this. You're only making it worse for yourself. Daniel's trip has been moved up to tomorrow morning. 6 a.m. departure. Give me the business or watch your son die. Your choice. V. My hands shook as I showed the message to Charlotte. That's it, Charlotte said. That's a direct threat. We're calling the police. She'll deny it. Say it's from a spoofed number or that I sent it to myself to support my delusions. Georgia, we have until 6 a.m. tomorrow to find evidence that will stick. Real evidence, not accusations or deleted photos. I met Charlotte's eyes. Can your nephew be here within the hour? Yes. Then we start searching. And Charlotte, call Thomas. Tell him if he has any police contacts who actually care about justice, we need them here tonight. Because if we don't find something concrete in the next 12 hours, my son is going to die. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 7 times. 11 hours until Daniel was supposed to leave for his hunting trip. 11 hours until Vanessa arranged his accident. Somewhere in this house was the evidence we needed, and I would tear the place apart, even if I had to crawl through every room myself to find it. Charlotte's nephew arrived first. James Dean was 40, a criminal defense attorney from Portland, and he took one look at me and then at his aunt before rolling up his sleeves. Tell me what we're looking for, he said. Jewelry, velvet bags, probably hidden somewhere accessible but not obvious. Rachel would have needed to move quickly, and she wouldn't risk the outdoor buildings in case someone saw her. The attic, Charlotte said suddenly. Where Rachel sleeps. If she took them last night, that's where they'd be. But a search of Rachel's room revealed nothing. Her belongings were sparse, almost aggressively normal. Clothes, toiletries, a few books. Her laptop password protected. No jewelry, no evidence of anything suspicious. She's too smart to keep them in her room, James said, pulling books off the shelf and checking behind them. What about air vents, loose floorboards? We checked everything. Nothing. By 8:30, Thomas arrived with a woman he introduced as Detective Linda Martinez from the state police. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, and she listened to my story without interruption. The problem is evidence, she said when I finished. Everything you've described could be explained away as the confusion of someone on heavy pain medication. The deleted photos, the missing jewelry, even the text message could be dismissed as fabricated. So we're looking for something irrefutable, Thomas said. Documents, recordings, financial records. The laptop, I said suddenly. Rachel's laptop. If she's been documenting false evidence of my confusion, if she and Vanessa have been communicating about the plan, it would be there. We can't access it without a warrant, Detective Martinez said, and I can't get a warrant based on accusations alone. I can access it, James said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. Hypothetically speaking, if someone were to, say, accidentally spill coffee on a laptop left open and unattended, and if that someone happened to see incriminating evidence on the screen before the owner returned, that evidence might be sufficient to justify further investigation. Charlotte gave her nephew a long look. James, I'm just thinking out loud, Aunt Charlotte. We went back to searching. The basement, the kitchen, the dining room. Charlotte's assistant arrived at 9 and joined the hunt. By 10 o'clock, we'd found nothing, and my hope was beginning to fray. Then I remembered something Rachel had said during my first week of recovery. I love old houses. So many interesting architectural details. Secret spaces. Secret spaces. The workshop, I said. There's a hidden compartment in the workbench. My father built it to hide jewelry while he worked on repairs. Only family knows about it. But you said Vanessa controls the workshop now, Charlotte said. She does, which makes it the perfect place to hide something. She could claim I put the jewelry there myself and forgot. We made our way to the workshop. A slow procession with me on the walker and Thomas supporting me. The building smelled of metal polish and the lavender oil I used to clean silver. Everything looked undisturbed, exactly as I'd left it before my surgery. The workbench dominated the center of the room. I directed Thomas to the hidden compartment, a false bottom in the third drawer, released by pressing 2 specific points simultaneously. The drawer slid open. Inside were the velvet bags. Don't touch them, Detective Martinez said sharply. If this is a setup, we need to preserve any evidence. Fingerprints, DNA. She pulled on latex gloves and carefully removed the bags, photographing everything. Inside were my grandmother's pieces, the sapphire parure, all exactly as they should be. This proves nothing except that they're here, James said. Vanessa will say you put them here yourself. Unless, Detective Martinez said slowly, we can prove when they were placed here. Mrs. Holloway, when did you last access this compartment? 6 months ago, when I moved pieces to my bedroom safe. I documented it in my computer files. The computer in here? She gestured to my laptop on the desk. Yes, but Vanessa has access to this building. She could have deleted the files. Detective Martinez opened the laptop. It wasn't password protected. I'd never needed security in my own workspace. She navigated to my files, but my stomach sank when she pulled up the inventory documents. The entry about moving the jewelry was gone. Wait, James said, leaning over her shoulder. Check the file properties. When was it last modified? Detective Martinez clicked through screens. Last modified yesterday at 2 p.m. Yesterday, when Vanessa had been in the workshop with the appraiser. She'd deleted the evidence while pretending to conduct an inventory. That's digital tampering, Thomas said. That's a crime. It's a start, Detective Martinez agreed. But it's still not enough. We need something that directly implicates them in the conspiracy. My phone rang. Daniel's number. I answered with shaking hands. Daniel? Mom, Vanessa told me what happened today. with the sheriff and the jewelry. "Mom, are you okay? Do you need me to come home?" Behind him, I could hear Vanessa's voice, too distant to make out words but urgent in tone. "Daniel, listen to me carefully. Do not go on that hunting trip tomorrow. There's going to be an accident. Vanessa has been planning—" "Mom, you're not making sense. What are you talking about?" "Your wife is trying to kill you. She wants your life insurance money. She's been working with Rachel to have me declared incompetent so she can steal my business. Daniel, please, you have to believe me." There was a long silence. Then, "Mom, have you been taking your medications? You sound confused." "I'm not confused. Daniel, I have proof. There was evidence, but they deleted it. The detective is here. Tell him—" "There's a detective there? Mom, what's going on?" Vanessa's voice in the background, clearer now. "Let me talk to her." "No, Daniel, don't—" "Mrs. Holloway." Vanessa's voice was smooth, concerned. "I think it's time we faced facts. You're not well. These paranoid fantasies about me trying to hurt Daniel, about conspiracies and murder plots. It's heartbreaking, but we need to get you help. Put Daniel back on," I demanded. "He's upset, Georgia. You're upsetting him with these accusations. The hunting trip is a guy's weekend, something Daniel needs. He's been under so much stress, dealing with your illness, the business concerns. You're not the only one suffering here. If he goes on that trip, he won't come back." "That's enough." Vanessa's voice went cold. "You're going to get help, Georgia. Tomorrow, Dr. Pierce is going to evaluate you, and he's going to recommend inpatient care. You'll be somewhere safe, somewhere you can't hurt yourself or make baseless accusations that destroy your family. And Daniel and I will take care of your business, just like we've been trying to do all along." She hung up. I stood there, phone in hand, and felt the last of my options slipping away. Daniel didn't believe me. He thought I was sick, confused, paranoid. "We have to stop him from going," I said. "Physically prevent him if necessary." "On what grounds?" Detective Martinez asked. "Mrs. Holloway, I believe you. But belief isn't evidence. If I try to stop your son from going on a legal hunting trip based on your claims, I'll be overstepping my authority. Vanessa could have me brought up on harassment charges. So we just let him go? Let him walk into a trap?" "No," Thomas said. "We follow him." "Detective, if we have reason to believe a crime is going to be attempted, can you provide surveillance?" "Unofficially, maybe. But I'll need something more than what we have. Some proof that there's an actual threat." Charlotte had been quiet, thinking. Now she spoke up. "Rachel's laptop. We need what's on it." "Without a warrant," Detective Martinez began. "What if Rachel voluntarily showed us?" Charlotte interrupted. "What if she thought Georgia was finally giving up, finally agreeing to go into care? She might let her guard down." "That's a tremendous risk," Thomas said. "If she suspects a trap." "She won't," I said, understanding dawning. "Because I'm going to call her right now and tell her I surrender." I pulled out my phone and dialed Rachel's number. She answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Holloway? Is everything all right?" "No," I said, and I didn't have to fake the exhaustion in my voice. "No, Rachel, everything is not all right. I need you to come back. I need help with my medications. I'm in so much pain. And I think maybe everyone is right. Maybe I am confused." A pause. Then, "Of course, Mrs. Holloway. I'll be right there. 20 minutes. After I hung up, Detective Martinez looked at me with something like respect. That was good. Convincing. "It's not entirely an act," I admitted. "I am exhausted. I am in pain. But I'm not confused and I'm not giving up." We set the stage carefully. Charlotte, James, and the detective hid in my bedroom. Thomas stayed in the workshop with the lights off. I sat in my armchair in the living room, the picture of defeated resignation. Rachel arrived exactly 20 minutes later, letting herself in with her key. She found me where I'd positioned myself, slumped in the chair, my walker nearby. "Oh, Mrs. Holloway," she said, all concern. "Let me help you upstairs. We'll get you comfortable, give you your proper medications." "I just want to sleep," I said. "I'm so tired of fighting." "I know. It's been hard on you, but you'll feel better once you're getting proper care." Dr. Pierce is going to help you tomorrow." She helped me stand, supporting most of my weight. We made our way slowly up the stairs. In my bedroom, she settled me into bed with practiced efficiency. "Rachel," I said, as she prepared my medications, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why? Why did you agree to this? Vanessa is paying you, obviously, but to help her murder someone?" Rachel's hand stilled over the pill organizer. For a moment, I thought I'd miscalculated, pushed too hard. Then she smiled, and it was nothing like the warm expression I'd seen for 2 weeks. "You really want to know, because you were easy, so trusting, so grateful for the help. Women like you always are. You spend your whole life being strong and independent, and the moment you need assistance, you fall apart. You become vulnerable. So this is about power? This is about money," Rachel corrected. "Vanessa promised me $200,000 and a recommendation to her very wealthy friends. Do you know how much caregivers make? How little we're valued? This job was supposed to be my retirement plan. And killing Daniel? That doesn't bother you?" Rachel shrugged. "I won't be the one doing it. Hunting accidents happen all the time. Guy goes out in the woods, tragic incident with a rifle. Vanessa has someone lined up, a professional. I'm just the caregiver who documented the mother-in-law's declining mental state. Clean hands. You're recording this conversation." It wasn't a question. Rachel laughed. "Are you? Is that your plan? Catch me confessing? Mrs. Holloway, even if you are recording, it won't matter. Your own son thinks you're delusional. Tomorrow you'll be evaluated, found incompetent, and anything you claim I said will be dismissed as another fantasy. What if I told you," Detective Martinez said, stepping out of the bathroom, "that I've heard enough for probable cause?" Rachel spun, her face going pale. Charlotte and James emerged from the closet. Thomas appeared in the doorway. "You tricked me," Rachel whispered. "No," I said. "I just gave you the same thing you gave me for 2 weeks. What you expected to see. You expected a defeated old woman, so that's what I showed you." Detective Martinez was already reading Rachel her rights as she snapped handcuffs on her wrists. Rachel's face had gone from pale to furious. "This won't stop anything," she spat. "Vanessa has contingencies. The hunting trip is already scheduled. Daniel's leaving in 8 hours, and there's nothing you can do to stop it." "Actually," Thomas said, holding up Rachel's phone, "while you were confessing, I used the PIN code Mrs. Holloway observed to access your messages. Every text from Vanessa, every detail of the plan, all backed up to the cloud, including the name and contact information of the hired professional." Rachel lunged at him, but Detective Martinez held her firm. "That's illegal. You can't use that evidence." "We'll let a judge decide," Detective Martinez said. "But right now, I have enough to bring your accomplice in for questioning. James, call this in. We need backup, and we need to pick up Vanessa Hart before she realizes what's happened." As they led Rachel down the stairs, she looked back at me one last time. "You're just delaying the inevitable. Women like Vanessa always win." "Not tonight," I said. After they'd gone, Charlotte helped me back to the armchair and handed me the phone. "You need to call Daniel. Tell him everything. He needs to hear it from you." I dialed with shaking hands. This time, Daniel answered himself. "Mom, what's going on? The police just showed up here. They're asking Vanessa to come down to the station for questioning. She's saying there's been some huge misunderstanding." "Daniel, stop. Listen to me. Everything I told you earlier is true. Every word." And finally, with the evidence secured and his wife being read her rights in the background, my son believed me. The next 72 hours blurred together in a cascade of police interviews, legal proceedings, and family reckonings that left me more exhausted than the hip surgery ever had. Vanessa was arrested at 11 p.m. that night. Detective Martinez told me later that she'd tried to run, actually made it to her car with a bag of cash and a fake passport before they stopped her. The woman who'd cried so convincingly in my bedroom, who'd played the devoted daughter-in-law for 5 years, had her escape planned down to the last detail. The hired professional, a man named Don Fowler who'd posed as the appraiser, was picked up at a motel outside the city. In his room, police found a hunting rifle with the serial numbers filed off, detailed maps of the area where Daniel's trip was planned, and $50,000 in cash. He was already cooperating with prosecutors, offering testimony in exchange for a reduced sentence. The depth of the conspiracy stunned even Detective Martinez. Vanessa had been planning this for over a year, since my husband's insurance policy had paid out, and she'd realized the real money was in my business. She'd researched guardianship laws, consulted with unethical attorneys, and carefully built relationships with people she thought could be useful. The sheriff, Dr. Pierce's office manager, even the clerk at the courthouse who'd fast-tracked her guardianship filing. She was thorough, Detective Martinez told me on the third day, sitting in my living room with her notes spread across the coffee table. If you hadn't found those messages, if you hadn't been as sharp as you are, this would have worked. Daniel would be dead, you'd be in a care facility, and she'd own everything. But I did find them, I said, and I'm still here. Daniel came by every day, and each visit was harder than police questioning. My son looked like he'd aged a decade. The man he'd shared a bed with, planned a future with, had wanted him dead for insurance money. How did I not see it? He asked on the fourth day, sitting in the chair Vanessa had occupied when she'd tried to manipulate the sheriff. 5 years, Mom. 5 years I was married to her, and I never suspected. She was good at hiding it, I said gently. She fooled me, too. But you figured it out. You saw through her when I couldn't. I had motivation you didn't have. She made the mistake of threatening you. I reached out and took his hand. Daniel, you can't blame yourself for loving someone who turned out to be a monster. That's on her, not you. He was quiet for a long moment. The investigator's report, the one you kept in your safe. You knew something was wrong with her before we got married, didn't you? I'd been dreading this conversation. I had concerns. Nothing concrete, just inconsistencies in her story. And you didn't tell me. No, I didn't. I convinced myself everyone deserved a second chance, that people could change. I was wrong. Daniel's jaw tightened. You should have told me. I know. I'm sorry. I'm angry with you about that, Mom. Really angry. He looked at me, his eyes red-rimmed from too many sleepless nights. But I'm also alive because you didn't give up when it mattered most. Because you fought for me even when I didn't believe you. So I don't know what to feel. Feel both things, I said. I can handle your anger. I deserve it. And when you're ready to forgive me, I'll be here. He left shortly after, and I sat alone in the gathering dusk, thinking about the cost of secrets and the weight of good intentions. Charlotte returned my business documents 3 days later, along with news from her forensic accountant. The embezzlement was worse than we'd thought. Over $400,000 had been siphoned off over 8 months, hidden in fake vendor accounts and shell companies. The good news is it's all traceable, Charlotte said. The accounts are frozen, and most of the money can be recovered. But Georgia, your business nearly died while you were focused on recovering from surgery. I trusted the wrong person, I said. We all did, even me. Charlotte set down her coffee cup. I should have insisted on regular audits. I should have checked the power of attorney paperwork more carefully. I failed you. You saved me, I corrected. When I needed you most, you believed me. You fought for me. That's what matters. The guardianship hearing was canceled, but the judge who'd been assigned to it requested a meeting. Judge Patricia Hendricks was 68, sharp as a blade, and clearly furious. Mrs. Holloway, she said when we met in her chambers the following week, I want you to know that I would never have granted that petition without a thorough investigation. But the fact that it got as far as it did concerns me deeply. There are protocols in place to prevent this kind of abuse, and they failed. Someone helped her, I said. She had connections in the courthouse. She did, and I'm working with law enforcement to identify everyone involved. Judge Hendricks leaned forward. I've been on the bench for 30 years. I've seen families torn apart by greed, by manipulation, by people who view the elderly as obstacles to wealth. But I've rarely seen someone fight back as effectively as you did. You saved yourself, Mrs. Holloway. I hope you're proud of that. I'm tired, I admitted. Mostly I'm just tired. Then rest. You've earned it. 2 weeks after Rachel's arrest, Dr. Pierce came to see me. Not for an evaluation, but to apologize. I should have questioned the reports I was getting. he said, standing awkwardly in my living room. Your daughter-in-law was very convincing, and the caregiver's documentation seemed thorough. But I should have spoken with you directly, assessed you myself. Yes, you should have, I agreed. I wasn't interested in making this easy for him. I filed a report with the medical board about my failure to follow proper protocol. I wanted you to know that. And I wanted to tell you that if you need anything going forward, genuine medical care, I'll be available. I've found a new doctor, I said. Someone younger, someone who doesn't make assumptions about elderly patients being confused. But I appreciate you coming here. He left looking smaller than when he'd arrived, and I felt no satisfaction in it. Just weariness. The physical therapy was the hardest part of recovery, both from the surgery and from the ordeal that had followed. My new caregiver was a no-nonsense woman named Patricia, who made it clear from day one that she wouldn't tolerate nonsense from me either. You want to regain your strength? Then work for it, she said during our first session. No shortcuts, no feeling sorry for yourself. You survived a murder plot. Walking across a room should be easy in comparison. She was right. By the end of the 3rd week, I was off the walker and using just a cane. By week 5, I was walking to the workshop on my own. The workshop. My sanctuary. Vanessa had touched everything, cataloged it, planned to sell it off piece by piece. It took me 3 days to cleanse the space of her presence, rearranging tools, burning sage like my mother used to do, reclaiming what was mine. On a Tuesday morning in early December, I sat at my workbench with a piece of raw silver and began to work. My hands remembered what my mind had been too occupied to recall, the feel of metal yielding to heat and pressure, the satisfaction of creation, the meditation of turning raw material into something beautiful. I was designing a new piece, something I'd been thinking about since that first terrible night when I'd discovered the messages. A pendant in the shape of a phoenix, rising from stylized flames. Not subtle, perhaps, but I was past the age where I needed to be subtle about my victories. Daniel came by that afternoon and found me in the workshop, silver dust on my hands, focused in a way I hadn't been since before the surgery. You're working again, he said. I am. He pulled up a stool and watched me work for several minutes before speaking. I've been thinking about what you said, about feeling angry and grateful at the same time. And I've decided that's okay. I can be both. I'm angry you didn't tell me about Vanessa before we married, but I'm grateful you never gave up on me, even when I didn't believe you. He paused. I'm also grateful you're my mother, even when you drive me crazy. I set down my tools and looked at my son, really looked at him. He was 40 years old, facing divorce from a woman who'd tried to have him killed, dealing with the betrayal of someone he'd loved. And he was here, choosing to rebuild our relationship despite the mistakes I'd made. I love you, I said. Even when I fail you, even when I make the wrong choices, that never changes. I know, Mom. He stood and hugged me carefully, mindful of my still healing hip. I know. After he left, I returned to the pendant. The silver was taking shape now, the phoenix emerging from the flames with wings spread wide. It would be the centerpiece of a new collection, I decided. Not for sale, but for myself. A reminder that survival wasn't just about making it through, it was about rising from the ashes stronger than before. The legal proceedings dragged on for months. Vanessa's trial was set for the following summer. Rachel took a plea deal and received 8 years for conspiracy and fraud. Don Fowler got 15 for attempted murder for hire. The courthouse clerk who'd fast-tracked the guardianship paperwork was fired and faced charges of corruption. And slowly, gradually, my life returned to a new kind of normal. Charlotte and I had lunch every Thursday, a ritual that became the highlight of my week. Thomas called monthly to check in, an unexpected friendship born from crisis. Detective Martinez stopped by occasionally, usually with questions about other cases involving elder exploitation. You'd be surprised how common this is, she told me one afternoon in spring. Adult children, caregivers, even attorneys. People see an elderly person with assets and they start planning. What Vanessa did was more elaborate than most, but the basic scheme? We see it all the time. So, I'm not unique. Oh, you're unique, Detective Martinez said with a slight smile. Most victims don't figure it out in time, and even fewer fight back successfully. You're a case study now. I use your story when I train officers on elder abuse recognition. I didn't know how I felt about being a case study, but if it helped protect someone else, I supposed that was worth something. By summer, I'd fully regained my mobility. The hip replacement had healed perfectly, and I was walking 2 miles a day around my property. The workshop was humming again with new designs, and I'd hired an assistant, a young woman named Sophie who was brilliant with metalwork and had impeccable references that Charlotte personally verified. The Moonstone series, recovered from the workshop and restored to my bedroom safe, became the centerpiece of a gallery exhibition in August. The show was titled Resilience, and it featured 40 years of my work, alongside new pieces inspired by everything I'd survived. At the opening, surrounded by collectors and journalists and people who wanted to hear the story behind the jewelry, I found myself thinking about that night I'd discovered the messages. How terrified I'd been, how powerless I'd felt, and how wrong I'd been about my own strength. Mrs. Holloway, a young reporter approached with a notebook. Can I ask you a few questions about your experience? I'm writing a piece about elder abuse and how you fought back. Of course, I said. What would you say to other elderly people who find themselves in situations like yours? I thought about it for a moment. I'd say that age doesn't mean powerlessness. Yes, my body was limited by injury and surgery, but my mind was sharp, my instincts were sound, and I had decades of experience reading people and situations. Vanessa made the mistake of assuming that because I needed help walking, I was helpless in every way. She confused vulnerability with weakness. And they're not the same thing? Not at all. Vulnerability is just being human. We all need help sometimes. But weakness? That's giving up when it matters most. I couldn't give up because my son's life depended on me staying strong. I gestured around the gallery. This is what 63 years of living looks like. Experience, wisdom, resilience. Those aren't things you lose with age. If anything, they get stronger. The reporter scribbled notes. What happened to your daughter-in-law? She's awaiting trial. I imagine she'll spend considerable time in prison thinking about the choices she made. Do you hate her? I considered the question carefully. No. Hate requires energy I don't want to spend on her. What I feel is something closer to pity. She had opportunities, intelligence, even charm. She could have built something legitimate, something real. Instead, she chose manipulation and murder. That's not hatred, I feel. It's disappointment in wasted potential. And your son? How is he? Healing, I said. Like me. Like all of us. It takes time to recover from betrayal, but time is something we both have now. That evening, after the gallery closed and the crowds dispersed, I stood alone among my life's work and felt a peace I hadn't experienced in years. The property that had been in my family for generations was secure. My business was thriving again. My son was safe and slowly learning to trust again. I'd won. Not through violence or revenge, but through patience, intelligence, and the quiet determination that comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you're capable of. The house, when I returned to it that night, felt different. Lighter somehow. The shadows that Vanessa and Rachel had cast were gone, replaced by the simple comfort of a home that was truly mine again. I made tea and sat on the back porch, watching the sun set over the workshop where I'd built my legacy. Tomorrow I'd start a new design. Something bold. Something that celebrated not just survival, but triumph. Because that's what this was, I realized. Not just surviving a conspiracy, but triumphing over people who'd underestimated me because of my age. Who'd seen a 63-year-old woman recovering from surgery and assumed she'd be easy to control. They'd learned differently. And in learning, they'd taught me something too. That the wisdom earned through decades of living, the patience developed through years of building a business, the quiet strength that comes from raising a child and burying a spouse and rebuilding after loss. Those things weren't diminished by age. They were my greatest weapons. The tea grew cold in my hands as darkness fell, but I stayed on the porch, savoring the silence, the safety. The profound satisfaction of knowing I'd saved not just my own life, but my son's. And I'd done it exactly the way my mother would have, with intelligence, patience, and the absolute refusal to be underestimated. In the end, that was the real legacy. Not the jewelry, not the business, not even the property. The legacy was this: Georgia Holloway, at 63 years old, had faced down people who wanted her dead or locked away, and she'd won. Not in spite of her age, but because of it. Now tell me, what would you have done if you were in my place? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out the video on your screen right now. I'm sure it will surprise you.